Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women in Tech Forum 2020. My name is Jessica Bleckenberg. I work as a Chief Network Officer at Marja01, and it's my greatest privilege to be your host for today's forum. The Women in Tech Finland is a network that aims to encourage women in technology, but also to promote diversity, inclusion, and equality in tech. The annual Women in Tech Forum has been the place for us to come together, get inspired, get to know fellow peers, and to build an extensive network. The theme of this year's Women in Tech Forum is how to close the gender gap in technology. The purpose is really to raise awareness about the gender gap and also to be inspired by the speakers here that will take the stage later today. We're going to be talking about everything from retaining women in technology to gender biases. But before we get into the actual speakers and the official program of today, I'd like to remind you about some practicalities in order to make the most out of your event experience here at today's forum. The first one is related to the official hashtags of the event. If you be tweeting or sharing something on social media, remember to use the official hashtags of the event. The hashtags are WITForum2020 and hashtag WomenInTechFI. For the networking part, which has always been crucial of the Women in Tech forums, please go to the LinkedIn page of Women in Tech Finland and drop your LinkedIn profile there to be connected with the people from the audience. If the people who are watching the stream online are facing any sort of difficulties, don't hesitate to reach out to our tech team over WhatsApp. The number can be found from the event platform listed below. And if people need to leave earlier, or if you have friends who didn't make it here today, don't worry, the event will be recorded and you can watch also the stream from the YouTube channel of Women in Tech Finland later this week. And for the fun part, we have chats and polls which you can interact and engage with during the event. Don't hesitate to drop comments in the chat box. And also, we prepared a few questions for you related to the polls. And to get you started, let's start with the first question of the poll for this year's forum. So if you go to the menu bar, you can fill out there the poll, and the question goes, how are you feeling today? And on the scale from 1 to 5, 5 being absolutely amazing, let's look into your answers in a couple of minutes. But now, I'd like to introduce on stage Vikas Gurung, who's the program manager of this year's Women in Tech Forum 2020. He's going to be sharing more about the theme and insights into what this year's forum is all about. Let's give Vikas a warm round of applause. Welcome.
Hello everybody, my name is Vikas Gurung, and on behalf of Women in Tech Finland, I want to welcome you all to the event. A few months back, when we started planning the theme of the event, we wanted to come up with something that resonated with COVID-19 situation in relation to women and tech industry, because as an organization, Women in Tech Finland's aim is to promote and encourage more women in tech industry. Well, the pandemic has proved that women are more vulnerable compared to the male counterparts in many ways, not just only in tech. In the tech industry, according to Trust Radius, women working in tech are 1.6 times more likely to be unemployed or laid off during the pandemic. And McKinsey has the number as high as 1.8 times that women are more vulnerable during the pandemic season. And so many other studies had similar patterns. So we firmly believe that this year's theme, Closing the Gender Gap, has become more relevant and important than ever. So through today's event, we want to engage discussions and also establish a platform to identify the reasons why gender gap exists, what are the regions, what gender biases are there, and what each one of us can do on a personal and organizational level to improve the situation. And most importantly, what I want to say is that how can we work together to create a better and more secure environment for women and also other gender minorities to not only join tech, but also succeed in it. So we really, really hope that you enjoy the event and also continue to engage in these discussions. Lastly, I just want to thank all the partners and speakers and all of you, about 1,800 registered participants, for making this event possible. So once again, on behalf of Women in Tech Finland, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bikash, for opening up the theme of this year's Women in Tech Forum. Next, let's look into the questions related to the poll that I asked you to answer previously. And also, as a small reminder, the poll is for the people who are joining us online. So remember, later also for these sessions, there's going to be more polls listed on the event platform where you can answer the questions accordingly. But I asked you, how are you feeling today on a scale 1 to 5? 5 being absolutely amazing. And looking into the polls, it looks like there are a few people who at least thinks that, you know, it's going to be a fantastic event. And I couldn't agree more with them. I'm very excited about all the speakers that we're going to have here later today. So I think everybody are ready to also get the show going. But hey, let's get into the official part of the event and get into the opening words of this year's Women in Tech Forum. We are thrilled to announce that Marjo Miettinen, one of the founders of the Women in Tech Network, will be giving the opening words for this year's forum. Marjo Miettinen is one of the owners and chair of Ensto Group. In 2019, she was elected as the chair of the board of technology industries in Finland. With a strong interest in non-profit organizations, being an experienced tech executive and business owner, Marjo for sure has been one of the women paving the path for women in tech. Here to give the opening words, let's give a warm round of applause to Marjo Miettinen. Welcome.
So here we are, a little bit sooner than I thought, actually. So dear friends, colleagues, and every Women in Tech enthusiast, I'm very delighted and very proud to be able to welcome you and to open also this 5th Women in Tech Forum. The topic of this first totally virtual forum is closing the gender gap in technology. We are over 1,000 of us participating online today, and we are eager to network, learn, share ideas, and develop ourselves. Thank you all for participating in this event. I would like to begin by thanking the entire Inclusive team for organizing this year's forum. As some of you know, Inclusive is a non-profit organization and Europe's first cross-border community with the mission of advancing diversity inclusion in working life. Some words about the history of Women in Tech. The Women in Tech Network began here in Finland already in 2012, when Anne Stenroos, one of its founders, had a great idea of bringing women together to network. Of course, we needed more muscles and asked the Federation of Finnish Technology Industries to help us. I would like to thank the tech industries for understanding the idea back then in 2013 when we had the first forum. I have participated all these Women in Tech forums in which I have had more fun than at any other event. The Women in Tech key principle has always been to bring more women with diverse backgrounds. into tech companies. Our need for technology is growing, but men are still developing most of the technology we use. Diversity in workforce boosts creativity, productivity, and innovation. Women's experiences alongside those of men should inform and guide the direction taken by engineering and technology innovation. We simply can't afford to ignore the perspectives of half of the population in future engineering, technical designs, and leadership. 1 week ago, I heard that Finland will chair one of the 6 action coalitions established by UN Women in Generation Equality Forum. The coalition led by Finland is called Technology and Innovation for Gender Equality. I'm so excited of that. Its goal is to set concrete, ambitious, and immediate actions during the period 2021 to 2026, which has a tangible impact on gender equality and the human rights of girls and women. I would now encourage all women to make bold and untraditional choices in order to pursue their interests and dreams. Do not hesitate to bring your studies or take a job in field of technology industry. There are multiple opportunities for pursuing ambitious goals and entering positions that drive issues forward. In addition, well-performing women still stand out in a male-dominated business. Their opportunities are worth exploiting. There is no doubt that women can be at least capable as men in challenging technology-related positions. Actually, I believe that we can even do better. I am actually a humanities graduate. Although I have worked for 30 years in the field of tech, I would now like to share my tech story, a very short one. I began my studies in the Faculty of Education and worked for 10 years as a class teacher for 10 to 12 years old children in Sweden and in Finland. In 1989, I returned to my hometown of Porvoo with my husband and 2 small children. This is the city where our family business Ensto was established when I was 1 year old. When we moved to Porvoo, I thought that I could phone to our CEO and ask about how the business is going. My idea was to inform our CEO about my interest in the company and the possibility to work in the future. He started to laugh and offered me a job right away. I was a little bit shocked and thought that I need a couple of days to think about it. We agreed that I would inform our CEO within 3 days. After 2 days, I phoned and I said yes. This happened over 30 years ago, and I have never regretted my decision. There have been ups and downs in my career and a lot of great memories. So my message to you all is never say no before thinking it over for a couple of days first. And remember to think out of the box. In her book Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg posed a question which is highly relevant. What would you do if you were not afraid? In this spirit, I wish you all a highly rewarding Women in Tech Forum 2020. Stay curious, write down your best ideas, make contacts with new people whom you haven't heard before, innovate and make your future better in the spirit of Women in Tech. Thank you and have a really inspiring hours ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. And I actually like to quote you on that. We're inviting more women to join us in tech because it is an exciting field to be working at. And related to that, I know there are new people who never been part of the Women in Tech forums previously. Would you have any sort of advice to give to them to make the most out of today and the forum event?
Yes, I actually would say so that speak a lot about women in tech and remember the hashtag also, and especially speak with men. We need men also.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mario.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. Next, we're going to be talking about building an inclusive digital economy. We have Yasin Samb from Google joining us. Yasin is the product marketing manager at Google and has been with Google for almost a decade already. She's always been an advocate for diversity and inclusion and is the true definition of a leader in technology. Here with us today, Yasin Samb. Welcome.
Pictures tell stories. It doesn't really matter if it's a selfie or if it's a portrait that somebody is taking of another person. You are sharing in that human moment.
Let's take a picture, you two. 1, 2, 3. No, he's too dark.
So this is where the discussion started.
Here, just use my phone. It's got a better sensor.
A better sensor? What does that even mean?
Color tuning is an extremely complicated process. When we look at images, what we try to do is figure out how much of a difference there is between, let's say, a reference image and the image that we actually are trying to quantify. We were running some tests on a product, and it was the proximity sensor we were testing. And we said, oh, it looks like it does 60 centimeters. And we looked at each other and we go, we're both white. The technology itself, as many people will say, is not racist. It's just that it wasn't tested properly to make sure that the designers weren't unconsciously biased. Hey, there's an entire world out there and we want to make sure this works for everybody. I love the fact that we get to influence cameras, that we get to share those experiences of life and emotion. And to me, that is what imaging is about. It is a vehicle to express humanity.
Take a picture of you two. 1, 2, 3.
So, excellent afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my living room in Meilahti, Helsinki. Before I go any further, I'd like to really thank Inclusive for their hard work. It means so much to me and Google to be invited and to be part of this event. The reason why I wanted to show this video and why I also love it is because it's a perfect metaphor of why we are here today, as well as the challenge that we are facing. It shows how our own biases and beliefs becomes the cameras through which the mind then takes snapshots of the world. As said, technology itself is not a racist. It's just that the designers were not screened for their unconscious biases. And as women in tech, we're for sure too well aware about these design flaws in our society. So let me allow me to introduce myself now. My name is Yasin Samb. I'm a leader at Google. I'm a growth marketing manager for Northern Europe. I'm Black. I'm Finnish Senegalese by nationality, born and raised in Ivory Coast. I'm a woman. And finally, I am honored and excited to be able to speak with you today. In many ways, I find that my identity is an illustration of intersectionality, and my life experiences are an embodiment of both the heights of privilege, but also the lows of discrimination. It is also what has led me to my position driving racial equity and diversity, equity, and inclusion overall at Google in Northern Europe and beyond, a role that I can now devote 50% of my time officially. So let's dive into the content. Next slide, please. Diversity and inclusion matters more than ever now, as already mentioned in the beautiful opening words. In a chaotic year marked by the crisis of racial injustice, as well as the uncertainties of COVID-19, the choices that companies and organizations make today concerning equity have a huge impact on the future. As women in tech, as leaders, as role models, we have the power and the responsibility to make the change also happen. We need to rebuild an inclusive digital economy that supports women and other underrepresented groups. In my view, these are the three pillars that we'll cover today that will help us get there. Firstly, we'll talk about data-driven diversity and equity, how to start from transparency and using data to inform decisions. Secondly, we'll touch upon the topic of digital transformation and the role it can play for a more inclusive economy. And finally, I really want to finish with the topic of allyship and ourselves being better role models and using the community of women that we also have around us today. Next slide, please. At Google, this is how we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to use the abbreviation of DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. Firstly, to really believe in what diversity can achieve means understanding that people are an investment. It's about how we can attract, develop, progress, and retain more underrepresented talents at all levels of the organization. Secondly, delivering a fair framework of fairness means that we need to future-proof all our own processes. That is what equity is about. And then finally, creating a culture of inclusivity means valuing everyone for who they are as individuals and where they want to go in their careers. Next slide, please. Before I go into the beef of data-driven diversity, equity, and inclusion, let's acknowledge the challenge we still face. Here are the numbers that still don't add up and make for depressive reading as well. When we add to this that only 17% of women are still in STEM roles are in Europe, on top of the general lack of career progression in the industry, it's no wonder that we have so many stories of women leaving too early on their tech career. This shows that we still have work to do. And when we go forward on the next slide, please, with this in mind, here is the case that we need to be working for, now even louder and longer than ever. There is no denying that one, diversity breeds innovation and creativity, as already mentioned before today. And secondly, gender diverse leadership teams outperform those that are not. So doing good is good for business. A more diverse technical society means equal opportunities to succeed. And this is something that we take at Google very seriously. Equality means really equity, which means really, in this case, closing the pay gap and putting more women in leadership roles. Next slide, please. At Google, we approach DEI as we would approach any other business case. We set clear objectives, key results, clear goals. We create dedicated, expert, and well-resourced teams. We create a strategy and put initiatives into action. And we review and track the progress regularly with the leadership team. Everything we do is driven by data, and these are the KPIs we pay most attention to. The end goal is obviously to increase representation, but in order to achieve a greater representation, we must go deeper into the numbers of hiring and attrition as well. So looking at this particular graph from our diversity report from last year that we published officially since 2014, it's clear that we still have a long way to go. And I want to be very humble presenting our numbers as well. So you can see that nearly 1 out of 3 of current Googlers worldwide are women. And unfortunately, this proportionate balance is also mirrored in our rate for new hires. Secondly, the attrition rate for women globally is 13%, which is much lower than the retention of male employees. The only silver lining here is that there is a positive retention rate for the Europe, Middle East, and EMEA region versus the global data. And then finally, representation of women at leadership levels was over 25% globally. So still a long way to go ahead. Next slide, please. Now moving on to the topic of enabling digital transformation to build inclusive economies. In order to improve hiring and retention, we must find a way to both diversify the talent pool, but at the same time create a magnetic working culture in our organizations and in our companies. And the answer lies in empowering digital transformation and the intersectoral collaboration, for example, in Finland, that is required to jointly make sure that no one is left behind. Turning to our data center friends in Hamina, the 1.2 million cumulative investment is a great example of how we can expose more people to the world of tech and also cascade the impact of this significant digital asset. And while the data center acknowledges the limitations of the available talent pool also in their industry, they have not only brought significant amounts of jobs in Finland and job opportunities, but the investment has also led to interesting collaborations, for instance, with the Ekami Educational Institute. So among other things, the institute facilitates rehabilitation of educationally marginalized groups while also piloting technology playground for future jobs project. And what is important here is that the first program supports those lacking the privilege of access, while the second offers innovative and inspiring ways to inspire tech-curious individuals. Next slide, please. Like the regional projects in Hamina, Google recognizes its responsibility to do more globally, to open up the digital economy to all. And this is where I will also, everyone here in the audience, encourage you to look into your organizations. Where can you go further? COVID has really shaken the world at its core, with its true effects to be seen, still realized. And what is certain, though, is that people from underrepresented groups and minorities, like women, are disproportionately impacted. So we must also help them recover. How I see it, to make the digital economy truly democratic, it requires a two-step approach. With one hand, we must provide the tools that are accessible for everyone, while on the other hand, we must certainly expand opportunities for underrepresented groups to learn how to use them. During my activities at Google, some notable activities that we have tried and where we have experimented that have included, for example, the I Am Remarkable trainings, which is a Google initiative empowering women and underrepresented groups to communicate and celebrate their achievements in the workplace and beyond. And secondly, taking a more macro perspective, economic perspective, with our Grow with Google program in Finland, we also work with the Federation of Finnish Enterprises to support entrepreneurs with a migrant background. Next slide, please. For digital transformation to include minorities in an organizational context, we need to create the conditions for organizations and teams to perform at their best. This is critical. This is where you should think about psychological safety, dependability on team members, structure, clarity. People feel that they are making an impact and the work is meaningful. Secondly, we need to enable collaboration and access to information in terms of transparency for everyone and everywhere. And finally, we need to be deliberate and persistent about the organizational culture that is needed to succeed. Next slide, please. So moving on the very final topic of allyship and being a role model. Change can't happen without each of us actively raising the voice of others and amplifying and advocating for others. It is critical to force a change in the culture that blocks the perception of who the tech industry is really for. So this is where everyone has a role to play. And the blueprint for that is exactly allyship, working for justice through the lens of your own advantage group membership to avoid this process to become performative or something that people start to execute. I can encourage allies to follow this three-step stage of approach of acknowledge, educate, and take action. Whether this is an individual or an organizational exercise, these stages are equally important. So in terms of acknowledging, if you haven't truly acknowledged the privilege of where you are, you cannot hope to be genuinely self-reflective. So you need to onboard to an educational journey without a deep and wide search for insights and understanding. The actions that you might take might become superficial or even detrimental to your own intentions. So thus, start thinking about how can you diversify your own life? What kind of leaders do you follow on social media? What kind of podcasts do you listen? Who is the most senior Black person you have worked with? Are you actively making an effort to understand voices that have been silenced? Ask yourself a few questions that understand you, how diversified your own life is. And then know that you don't know what you don't know. So educate yourself and be able to enter the quality discussions where you can raise the voice of the community, but also the voice of others. Let's go to the final slide. Before I finish my keynote, I want to personally recognize how privileged my professional position as Google has been, particularly during these very uncertain times. However, I also recognize that as an intersectional role model, there is a community out there that needs me to support as an ally. There is no time to waste to create a culture of belonging across lines of difference. And whether it is for driving better profit for a company or building a more inclusive economy where no one is left before, we need to drive the change individually and through our organizations to actively amplify and advocate for others. As women in tech, we have the opportunity to not only inspire others, but also to change the design of our societies by changing perspectives and affecting the perceptions of those who shape the future. This is a great responsibility, but it's also an exciting opportunity. And finally, I hope that we all change the lens through which we see our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Yassine, for a great presentation. You mentioned a lot about role models and also the importance of having a diverse role models. But I would like to ask you, who has been your sort of role model throughout your career, and perhaps also even you entered the tech sphere in the early days of your career?
Oh, thank you for asking the question. I think the important point is that there are different kinds of role models during your career. So obviously, I'm looking at people who look like me. It's obvious to say, for example, Michelle Obama or Rosa Parks, or people who have made really some kind of change. But the interesting thing is that lately, actually, after discovering my passions on top of the work that I'm doing, Martti Ahtisaari, in terms of negotiating peace in 3 different continents, a Nobel Prize winner, has become a really big role model and inspiration to me, in terms of also being the voice for diversity and bridge for cooperation.
Great. Thank you so much for being here today with us at the forum, and I'm wishing you a great evening as well. Thank you so much, Yasin, for joining us.
Thank you so much again, and I will be privileged to continue watching the session.
Please do so. See ya. All right, let's move on to the next program. According to research, more women are leaving the tech industry, and the numbers of women represented in tech are not looking too great either. Only 3% of females says that a career in technology would be their first choice. Only 17% of ICT specialists are women. And 93% of all the capital invested in tech companies are going to all male teams. Next, our panel discussion will focus on how to retain women in the tech industry by making the tech culture more inclusive. Joining us for the session, we have Thomas Nyström, Country Manager and Director of Accenture Finland, Ekaterina Gianelli, Partner at Inventure, Anna-Maria Henell, CEO at DCR, and Elina Lappalainen from Talouselämä moderating the discussion. Welcome on stage. The stage is yours.
Hello and good afternoon on my behalf too. I'm Elina Lappalainen and I'm business journalist covering startups, venture funding and technology. Also a geek girl, feminist and women in tech. This is a special week actually for me since this is my last week in Talouselämä magazine as a business journalist there before some new challenges, so stay tuned about that. But I wanted to come here because this issue, women in tech and female founders in startups, has been on my agenda during my whole career in Talouselämä. Actually, one of the first articles, 2011, in there was about it. I wrote about a future female network and listed some of the very early female founders, and there weren't many. Since then, the situation has been going towards better time, and you are one of the examples, you two here. And that's great development, but there's still a lot to do. Here, today we are to talk about how to retain women in tech industry by making the tech culture inclusive. But before we go, there's one question for in online audience. Please answer and attend the poll. The question is, how many % of your organization's employees are female? And we go through the results a bit later then. And now, let's start with a bit of introduction. Could you all tell about yourself and what's your relationship to this topic? Thomas, please.
So, as a country managing director, I'm responsible for 1,000 people in Accenture. And of course, it makes a lot of business sense to have a diverse organization. I also have a responsibility to the people that we employ to make sure that they have equal opportunity. On a more personal note, my wife is making a career in tech, and I have 2 daughters, 17 and 19, who I want to make sure have all the possibilities in the world as well.
First of all, pleasure to be here. My name is Ekaterina Gianelli, and I'm one of the partners at Inventure. It's a Nordic venture capital firm. We invest in and work with early stage startups to help them grow and to help them build their teams.
Okay, so I'm Anna-Maria Henell. It's actually funny that I'm in Women in Tech Forum because the technology was never my primary thing I wanted to do. So it was kind of to study the tech was as a kind of a backup thing for me because I wanted to make an impact in the world, and tech wasn't kind of shown as I can do something for that. So when I went for education in the University of Technology, it's kind of really specific on what you want to study, and you need to be interested in a machine or coding or construction or something, and I didn't kind of see myself there.
And well, anyway, I went there because I needed to get some job or so. So I went to work first for a really big technology corporation. And I did what typically a woman or whoever in tech is doing. So doing this kind of project work related to that specific area I was studying. And only after I created the own company, I actually understood what the technology really can bring to you. So it's not that you need to go and study and do that for the rest of your life, but the technology enables you to create something great together with other people. And only now when I had the company, I know that this is what we should do, and this is how we can get women to learn tech, because you can show them on what you can do. And what I today do is very far from that material science I studied. So we do medical technology software for surgeons and radiologists for better diagnosis and all that. And that is kind of really close to what I want to do and how can I make an impact to the world.
So we have different angles on this topic: a big international technology company, venture fund, and a startup founder. Different angles, but I think we will find a common space here. The segregation is quite heavy in Finnish technology field. Only 19% of those who study technology are female, and only 22% of employees on technology companies are women. Thomas Nyström, as a global organization, Accenture has been one of the forerunners on driving diversity and inclusive culture. What measures you have taken? What do you do?
So I think that it starts by acknowledging the fact that we just heard from Yasin earlier, that it makes complete business sense to have a diverse organization, right? So as companies seek to be more profitable and to grow, they should employ diversity as one way to get there. And we put that into play. So we have 500,000 employees around the world. It's quite a lot of people, right? And we set a clear objective that by 2025, so 5 years from now, we should be a completely diverse organization, 50-50 in gender split. But we don't, of course, talk about diversity only on the gender axis. There's all kinds of diversity, cultural, racial, individual. And we want to have a truly diverse organization as a company. And we're working against that very systematically at this point in time, making progress towards that 50-50 goal. Actually, globally right now, we have 44% of our people are women. And here in Finland, we are at 38%.
Can you tell a little bit more about the measures you actually do in every day? What kind of things you have diversity, education, and etc.?
Well, we do quite a lot of things, right? We publish a lot of research around this because one of the things you need to do as a big organization is to make some noise around this, right? It's not only kind of an internal thing, you need to be public and vocal about this. Strategy today is a public topic. So we're very clear on our objectives and we make it very clear public that what we want to do. But then if you look at all the things we do, it's quite a lot of different things. In our research last year, I think we listed 40 topics that do these things, right? But in general, if we categorize them, you need to be clear on the leadership topic. And that means your leadership needs to believe this. You need to be, it's very difficult to be a leader if you're not transparent. And building equal culture is about being transparent. And that means that I need to believe in these things myself, right? It starts there, otherwise it will not work. And that's what our leaders do. We do a lot of training around this for all of our people on bias, on inclusion and diversity. And we're just running a campaign again in Finland right now this month to run training sessions on this, actually. We want to support women. So it's not about them managing this on their own. We put in play a number of measures around coaching, support networks. So with that as an example is how we operate, right? So there's a lot of focus on this internally. And at the end of the day, we want to be in position where we have strong internal women leaders in the company. So they are role models. And actually, we have a female CEO now, Julie Sweet.
How does this sound to you, Ekaterina and Anna-Maria, when you think about building diversity and inclusive culture in your teams? How do you compare it to what Thomas said?
Well, I can maybe start with the current state of affair in the VC and startup space altogether. So if you think about the numbers, last year only 1% of the venture capital was invested in female founders team. Around Europe, in the Nordics, the situation is very similar. So we're talking about 1 to 2%. In the VC space, the situation is not much better. So according to the recent research that Tesi, one of the major institutional LPs, has done, only 12% of VC professionals are female, and half of the funds didn't have a single woman in their investment team. So I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we need a change. So in my view, we of course need more women to start, run, and own the businesses. And if we want to, I'm a big believer that if you want to see a change, you need to create it. So if I think about what we do at Inventure, of course we pay a lot of attention to how we recruit, both as Inventure as well as our startups. So when we invest in startups, we need to see diversity in their teams from the beginning because it's impossible to fix it later. When it comes to our own team, we already have 8 nationalities in a small 12-people team, so we are very, very particular about what we hire for. If I think about hiring processes, we try to look for culture adds and not culture fits. So I can just give you a personal example. We just opened a job search for an investment analyst, and we know that typically it's associated with very masculine profiles and finance, data, etc., while in reality it's not. It's a lot about people. So we have been proactively encouraging people with different backgrounds to apply. So I would say that if you want to see the change, think about what you can do today in your daily life in terms of your own team or in terms of your own decisions.
Well, this is very visible change if you happen to have a diverse team. I've covered some Finnish VC funds with only male partners, so it's quite obvious that there's a lot to do. But Anna-Maria, how do you build diversity and inclusivity in your startup?
Well, if I can first comment on kind of what you said. So I was 20 years in a big corporation as a woman in tech, and I saw the change in there already. So it's kind of, I like that the thing is now noticed. So it's talked about, and you kind of make noise about it. And really, I don't remember kind of 25 years anyone talking that inclusivity or diversity is building business profit. Nobody told or was talking about that. So in that sense, I think it's great that it's there. Then on the other hand, on the startup phase, I don't know how old the culture is, maybe not that old in Finland anyway, so it might not be there yet. So if I think about myself or my colleagues, the few of them that I know, maybe no one had the dream in the beginning to be an entrepreneur or go for a VC money. So it's not something that you dream about or build your career towards that. So maybe there is not that much of a culture of it yet, and that's why there are so few of us. And it would be great to have this kind of network and people to kind of talk about it, what it is like. For our own team, I'm just looking, we are on that same purple to 25% of women in the team. In the startup, when you build up a team, there are so many things to do. So it's maybe not the first thing I think about diversity, even though I know all the lovely things about it. So I need to just build a functional thing first. And there, so it's more or less, doesn't depend who you are or where you come from, if you just know how to fit in. So that's the primary thing.
How big your team is now?
It's 15, 16.
And you have
three
women. Okay.
Yes.
In what roles?
I'm one. Second is senior algorithm developer, And then we have one sales application manager. So one is towards the customers, one is high-tech kind of coding, and then I'm the one.
Is it difficult to hire women to tech roles?
There is not that many applicants, actually.
I think that's maybe the main challenge, that instead of waiting for people to apply, you have to proactively look for them, or at least that has been our strategy, and that has been very helpful. So for us, it's more important to fix the blind spots that we have in our companies but by investing maybe more time into these searches rather than getting someone quicker.
Yeah, so we also, in a startup, when you collect a team or put a team together, you do a lot of work to find the perfect people into that. And then, in that space, there is not that many people that you can drive kind of to this. But I think that at least when we do so, young people, women, kind of enthusiastic about the thing, even though you're not in the space yet, you can learn, and we can actually give the model that I was talking in the early thing, that technology is so much more than just doing that one thing. So if we can give them the model on what it actually can be, so then it maybe comes kind of from those little spots to kind of grow to a bigger thing.
Thomas?
But I would dearly love to hire more women than I do today in the tech space, that's for sure. And it's a challenge to get the right types of candidates today. And if you look at what we've done, for example, in Riga, in Latvia, where we have our local nearshore delivery center with 1,500 people or so, and we hire a lot of people every year. And there we have managed to get the gender diversity of females to over 40% by a very systematic program where we take junior people and we train them ourselves over summer. And we have a big campus, we run it every year, and then we hire people from that. So we've done, we're just not looking to get people kind of from somewhere else or from other jobs. We're actually training them ourselves, so we get them into the profiles we need, right? A lot of proactive stuff going on.
Yeah, it was just about, maybe just to comment on that, I think we often advise our startups to hire for soft skills other than hard skills. So people with problem-solving skills, creativity, empathy, etc., because the rest could be trained afterwards.
Indeed, right, I agree. The most important skill is the ability to learn.
Exactly.
And then, your baseline is what it is, but if you got the attitude, you can do whatever.
Exactly.
But of course, Ekaterina, you already referred to the numbers, but according to the recent report by Unconventional Ventures last year, about 93% of the venture funding went to all male founder teams, and only 6% went to diverse teams, 1.3% to female teams. So very little capital is invested to companies founded by women. What could be reason for that?
Well, first of all, today we don't see enough of companies run by women or run by diverse teams. So that's something that we are trying to change, and we are trying to encourage founders to start with diverse teams from the very beginning, as well as promote women to the leadership roles and make women responsible for sales or for P&L. I think another issue is that there are very few women on cap tables today. Again, being a VC, I see hundreds of cap tables every year, and unfortunately, women still own a very small portion of our businesses. So again, if you are in a position, or if you're one of the founders, make sure that you are intentional about your cap tables and make sure that you give people a chance to own the business that they work for. And if you are an employee in a startup, I would really encourage you to start the conversation around the ownership. And often we take a lot of risks by joining startups. We already take a lower salary, so make sure that you get to own part of the business.
Well, of course, you can't invest to female founders if there are none. So, Anna-Maria, why do you think there are still so few female startup founders? Why did you pick up one?
it's not that I wanted to become a founder. There was just something that I wanted to do. So it's not me, it's the thing I wanted to do. And if I would have known the statistics beforehand, I maybe be a bit hesitant about entering, and I didn't actually know that there is a difference if you're a woman or a man or who is looking for money. I thought that it's the kind of the thing that you do, and I think it still is. It's maybe, so I actually don't know where that thing comes from, but that one I know that in the tech space, as I was telling, so women who go into the tech space are maybe more kind of focused then that they are really interested in that specific area and not kind of then going towards that building a company thing. Maybe there is also really few role models in Finland, at least, that there is not that many that you can follow and think as a young person, yes, this is what I want to become.
Yeah, it's all about building self-confidence in women already when they're young, right? That they are good, they can do this. It's not like a boy's hobby to build Legos and so forth, right? They should get into this early and build that kind of belief in themselves that they are good. Now we have too much of a bias kicking in at an early stage, and we see too few women going into these technical studies because of it.
Well, in 2011, when I listed some early female founders in Finland, there were only a few of them, but now I keep an Excel file where I list female startup CEOs, and now there are more than 30 names on my list in Finland. That's great. So to actively promote and give them voice is something that we can also do in media. But do you think women startup entrepreneurs are more risk averse? Is it too risky? Like venture capital is a high risk thing.
From my personal perspective, I'm not a risk-taking personality as such. I have, the family and the children, I need to get kind of them food and everything. So it's not that I want to do this big thing and I take all my risk, my money and my life and I do this. It's not what has my personality. So, but you don't need to be that. So maybe it's a bit emphasized that you need to drive for that, but you can just do it beside everything else in your life.
Why would it be high risk?
Well, most of the VC-funded startups fail, actually. So.
But that's typically a good lesson, and it doesn't mean that you kind of necessarily individually fail economically when that happens, right? So people probably perceive it as a bigger risk than it actually is for themselves, right?
And it can also be a mental risk in a sense. It's much more safer to work for somebody else and they just tell you what you do. And then you maybe fail, but it's okay and you can do something else. So in a startup life, it's really kind of the whole of the responsibility that you take, and it's the risk for everybody that is working for you, so you cannot fail. So it's in a sense, it's a risky thing to go, and you need to be really brave to go that path.
But I agree. I don't think, of course, the risk is there. You need to accept the fact that the risk is there and just live with it. And if the startup fails, well, nothing goes wrong. You can continue with your own life. We have super good support from the government, etc. So I don't see too much risks in that either.
Yeah.
But if you look at the poll answers for how many % of your organization's employees are female, most of you in online audience say that the 0 to 25%. So there is really a lot to do. But there are some companies that have majority of female, so that can happen too. Interesting. But the next poll question is, and please go and answer, does your organization have women in C-level positions? So go and answer that, we can see that too. Because there are bottlenecks in every phase of this pipeline. And first of all, there aren't enough girls who choose to study tech. Then even if the companies try to recruit 50% men and female, as you do in Accenture, for example, then women don't stay. And then if there are too little women in senior or leading positions in big tech companies, it affects on startups too, because then you don't have the experience that's needed to become a founder. What do you think about this development and what to do with all these bottlenecks?
So I think you need to work at all levels, right? We need to work on women taking more technical education or changing what we call technical education to accept a broader base of women in there, however you want to view the situation. But of course, it's clear that that we have a negative trend in terms of then career projection for women in tech organization. That's the same at Accenture historically, where you look at where do we have our women. The higher up you go in the organization, the less women we have. And that's what we are working on very hard right now. And we are, there's a number of things you can do. First of all, there are some of these critical points you need to look after. For example, after maternity leave, maybe they look at life differently. How can we kind of give them a different role if they want to do some, less hours? We be flexible. So there's a lot of this communication and, giving people the freedom to be who they are aspects that just need to be very clear. Because if nobody ever talks about them, then people might assume that actually it's not good and I'm different, so I'm going to do something else in life now. And we're putting emphasis on those. We're creating networks for people who are out on maternity leave or paternity leave and these kind of things. But then we need these role models. And we are very strict right now, for example, on promotions. And when we promote people in our organization, we need to ensure that we have gender diversity. We are very strict on I just looked at all the statistics for this year's round, which will come public internally in Accenture in December on promotions, as well as on bonuses and pay increases and these kind of things. And I just looked at all the data points, and it is surprisingly good in terms of, we don't, for example, allocate bonuses to male over female too much and all those things. But that requires a rigorous process to make sure that all this works and nothing wrong happens. But we still need to make sure that we get these role models in play, so that creates more pull, because otherwise it's a lot of work, and we are not there yet, right? We are working hard on it, but there's still a way to go. But right now, our CEO is female, our CFO is a female, and our HR global officer is a female. So we have our global leadership webcasts. There's only women on it.
Well, that's great to hear. But according to Accenture and Girls Who Code, in the US, about 50% of women who work in technology companies leave before they turn 35. Does this happen also in Accenture in Finland?
Well, I don't know the percentage, but it's very clear that as we go, over career levels, we have less women per career level, right, as a percentage. So it shrinks, the percentage. And that's the objective that we're trying to turn around. So we don't want to end up in a 50-50 split on diversity, but then we have a skewed women pyramid like this and a male pyramid which is kind of heavier at the top. That's not the objective. The objective to have leadership teams that are also diverse, right? And that's the objective, for sure.
Well, the answers for the poll, does your organization have women in C-level positions? Yes, said 77% of you in the online audience. So that's, I think, pretty good. What do you think?
But you just remember, the C-level is a pretty broad group of people. So you have quite many people, let's say 10, 15 in a C-level organization, typically on leadership positions. And typically at least one of them is female, right? But the question is, what is the actual percentage of women, right, in that group? Do you have women in business leadership positions? As the CEO, you typically see women in HR role or in support roles, but you want them there in front leading business groups and units as well, right?
But if we think that the culture is the key, and there are bad examples too. In 2017, Me Too came also to tech industry, to Silicon Valley companies and international VCs. Then we saw a lot of articles about toxic pro culture. I also wrote some articles about it. Is that the reason why women don't stay in tech companies? Do you see that kind of culture in any startups you have invested or any?
I would like to say no. Of course, I think we have too many startups that we invested in who are founded by male-only teams. I think this has been changing, and we've been trying to invest in companies that are diverse from the very beginning or from the get-go, because otherwise it's very difficult to fix in the future. I think, again, the first step is to realize that your company or your team is not diverse enough, gender diverse enough, for example. And then if you do want to fix it, I would suggest that you hire a woman as your next executive hire. Again, there is a lot of research suggesting that teams with a woman executive or woman CEO hire 2 times more female in the team. So
this
that would help
Kaufman Fellow report.
Exactly, and
yes.
if there is both the female founder and the female executive, it goes up to 6x. So the numbers will change a lot in the future if you make an effort and if you make the next hire a woman, next leadership hire a woman.
But does it help if you have more women as VCs?
Absolutely, there is also a lot of research around that. So I believe women in investing roles or investment professionals lead 2 times more rounds at seed and early stage, giving female founders a chance very early on in their career. So again, I think having more female investment professionals would help a lot. And I hope that's something that our institutional investors start paying attention to.
So if we go one round about the solutions to the problem, what could help to this situation?
So if you look at the latest research we have, it indicates that while there's general acceptance of this, 65% of leaders in organizations believe that they have an inclusive and open culture for diversity. And then if you ask from the employer perspective, they say 35%.
So there's a gap.
There's a gap, right? So we are at the stage where understanding is there, but it hasn't really kind of penetrated into actions yet. And we need to close that gap so you get to 100% on both sides. And right now, the responsibility is on the leadership to take action here, to drive a diverse culture, inclusive and give everybody an equal opportunity. And of course, if you're a leader, a CEO, there are many things on your table. You have financials, you have partnerships, you have technology, you have quality, you have innovation. And these days you have health, and then you have CO2 emissions and carbon neutrality, and then you have culture and equality as well. And you just need to understand that these things are also important, and get that into your agenda, right? And there's a certain type of bias that I believe exists where you kind of automatically assume that everything is okay because you just think it's okay between your own ears. But no, you need to show example, you need to be out there and you make sure that these things are actually in play.
Anna-Maria.
Yes. So I would maybe change things from the young generation by kind of encouraging or showing them more that what a tech career can be. So not just the technology of a certain kind and you need to be interested in this or that, but on a broader level, show them that what can they do, because I also have a 17, 18 years old girls, and I asked them yesterday night, I'm going to this panel tomorrow, so what do you think about the tech as a career? And their first answer was, oh no, I actually don't like that, and I don't want to go there because I'm not interested in this or that. So they clearly cannot see what it can bring to their lives, and it also maybe also can affect that if they go there and they understand what they can do, they may also retain in the area, in the big companies, that they learn what they can do. They can ask for responsibility, they can go for those more senior positions, and they can actually think of a lifelong experience through the technology. So I would go from there.
And maybe to add to what has been said in terms of startup ecosystem, then again, I would first of all encourage you to make your next hire, leadership hire, a woman. Then I would definitely like to see more women going into investment professionals roles and investing in startups. And then more women on the cap tables of businesses. So maybe compromising on your salary, but then making sure that you get to own the business that you are running.
Well, technology is the space where we do impact and change the world, so actually we need to be involved, all of us. Thank you, Thomas, Ekaterina, and Anna-Maria, for this great discussion, and thank you, online audience. Let's work together to make technology more diverse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tuomas, Ekaterina, Anna-Maria, and Elina for a very interesting panel discussion. Next, we will have a short break, but as a small reminder, if you're turning off the stream for a moment, don't hesitate to go into the Women in Tech Finland LinkedIn page and drop your LinkedIn profiles there to get connected with people who are here in the audience today and also some of our speakers. Networking is crucial in terms of, building our extensive network and fellow peers of tech heads. So remember to go there to get the networking going. We're going to be back 10 to 6, so I see you all very soon. Have a good break. Hello, and welcome back to the second part of this year's Virtual Women in Tech Forum 2020. We're ready to continue the program for the second part, but as a small reminder, I'm sure there are some people who just joined our stream. I'd like to go through some of the practicalities related to the event to ensure you are having the best experience here at this year's forum. So, if you're going to be tweeting or sharing something on social media, don't hesitate to use those hashtags WITForum2020 and hashtag WomenInTechFI. For the networking part, we encourage all of the people here in the audience to go to the Women in Tech Finland LinkedIn page, and there in the dedicated thread, remember to drop your LinkedIn profile in order to get connected with people in the audience and our speakers as well. And for the fun part, we have a chat box and polls that will be active throughout the event. It was really nice for the first part, so please remember to drop the comments there as well and answer the polls whenever we have questions that we want to ask the people who are joining us online specifically. But hey, let's continue with this next keynote. Our next speaker has an impressive background of working for over 20 years in the fast-paced payment industry. She lives by her life motto, don't do shit, get shit done, and she's one of the founders of the Nordic payment service provider Infuse. Next, talking about how she went from building banks to become a tech founder and the impact of a can-do mindset. We have Monika Liikamaa, co-founder, CEO, and chair, joining us here on stage. Welcome, Monika.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Women in Tech. And thank you, Inclusive, for asking me to come and do the thing I'm the best at, talking about myself. Especially if you ask people who know me, I tend to talk a lot, so my apologies if my voice is a bit low. I've been talking a lot for the past 20 years, but definitely for the past 4 years has been the co-founder of Infuse. So I'm here to talk a little bit about my journey and hopefully inspire people to have the courage to take the next steps, and also understanding what the can-do mindset is and what courage means when you want to proceed your dreams. So in order to give you a better understanding of who I am and why I am where I am, I'll talk a little bit about me first to give you a background. So I'm born in 1975. That makes me 45 years young. I'm a mother of 4, 2 girls, 2 boys, and I started off my life in the north part of Sweden. So I'm from a small town called Haparanda, which is in the border to Finland, and where I actually found the love of my life already in the 90s, mid-90s, and been together with my husband for the past 27 years, building our life together. I started off a lot knowing what I didn't want to do, and I think that's also one of the things that is important. So if you don't know what you want to do, at least if you know what you don't want to do, then that's a good way of proceeding. So I knew that I wanted more than being in the north part where there was very limited amount of ways to do work. My father is an entrepreneur, so I've been always brought up that doing work and working hard has a value of its own, and that's something I have really taken with me and embraced. So back in the early days when I started studying system engineering, and I was actually making my money as a taxi driver and then actually a jail guard in an all-male jail. And that gave me a good insight into different worlds. So I think also having a diverse background is a good thing. I moved to Finland in 1996 and learned the language already as a small kid somewhat, but then talking more, of course, moving here. I have to say that I'm happy about the country we have become, and of course I have had currently big challenges in what team to root for in ice hockey, but you really know where you've been brought up when you still have some passions on probably the wrong side of the border. I started off as a consultant working in tech. Started off as project manager and developer, and then ended up actually starting in the beginning of, or actually in the end of the 90s, in a company called Telia Finland, so a very telco-driven company. And then I never left until 2006, the company, but the company I left had been living through the dot-com boom, which I think at least has been a good thing for me personally, have actually lived through the hype of the dot-com era, being part of Telia, who was bought up by Song Networks, who was bought up by TDC. So a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And already back in then, my whole philosophy is that whatever I do the best I can, and I really go in to make things happen. So looking back at my life now, I can really say I'm a builder. I like getting things done. And as Jessica said, we have this saying that we don't do shit, but we get shit done. That's truly something I live by. So during my life in Finland, I've also done more studies because I really wanted to look into the more financial aspects. So being a developer and being a project manager, I also did my executive MBA at Hanken, more focusing on finance education and giving those backgrounds. But the most things that I'm most proud of in my life is of course my children. So I have had a good fortune of being married, and still am, to a husband where we really have an equal stance in our life. We have built our life together. So two of my daughters, the eldest, she's 20. She is now following her father's footsteps and is now taking education in construction engineering. And then my youngest daughter, Ada, who was born under me being part of building S-Bank and actually being part of a lot of negotiations and stuff. She wants to become the president of Finland, even though I told her that's not a real job, but it's still something that she wants to do. And meanwhile, she'll be the CEO of Enfuse. So let's see what happens when we get there. Also, my sons, really proud of them. My youngest one, Samuli, who is actually born just when we went live with S-Bank. He wants to be a developer at Supercell, and then Taneli, he wants to be a pilot. So let's see what happens. But I think it's more about really building your kids up to having the dreams and courage to do what needs to be done. And also in Finland, we talked a lot about how we get more women into tech. It's really about giving them the courage, both for the boys and the girls, to understand that they are equal and have the equal opportunities. And that's something that we as parents and mothers should really look to be driving. So change starts from every position and in every age. A little bit about Enfuse. So how did Enfuse come about? I think one of the biggest things in my life is also the courage to just grab opportunities. So as I said, not knowing what I want to do, is one part, and then trying out a lot of things. I know that building the company I have built now with my co-founders and all the people who work for Enfuse wouldn't have been possible unless I would have done the things I did. So being part of building S-Bank and then Elisa Rahoitus and Elisa Lompakko and working at Aktia, all of those have really taught me a lot of good things. You know, learning the hard way and being able to use that learnings to build a company that we are today. I think one of the things that also drives me personally, of course, that I'm quite, how should I say, kilpailuhenkinen. I like to win. I'm competitive by nature. And I think what that means is that for me, I compete the most with myself. And I want to build a company and work for a company that I can be proud of. And those are core values when we come to Enfuse. So really doing collaborative stuff. No one can succeed alone. Not even Michael Phelps did it on his own, even though he worked hard, and that's the things that you need to do. But in the end of the day, you need to do it together. When it comes to the fact of having the courage to grab opportunities, Enfuse came about from a situation where I was asked to cup of coffee. So I really urge everyone to do networking, because you never know who you will meet, and you will never know whenever you need to call that person. And I have always had the courage to ask for help. And up until this day, and I believe moving forward, no one has ever turned me down. Maybe someone hadn't been able to help me, but they have always said who I should call next. And that's also something that I've been trying to live by. So really helping people move along in their dreams and their businesses. So when we then started to look about founding the company that today is Enfuse, and it's only in the beginning of its journey, we really wanted to set high ambitions. You know, we talk about these big, hairy, audacious goals, which is really important, and we live by them also in the company, because I believe that if you don't have big enough goals, you will only be doing small things. And doing small things eventually end up in small things. So having the courage to drive to do big things. So we really want to build a company that drives a positive impact in the financial industry, and from that enables inclusivity in payments. And by that we can really impact the world we live in. So when we set out to build Enfuse, we started off by doing payments, because that's what we knew. So we took something that we knew that we were good at, and we just looked at it and said, hey, there has to be a better way. We need to be able to do things better, faster, and globally scalable. I know that we've been talking a lot about Finnish companies don't have the ambition level big enough to go big. And I think at least that's something we don't have a problem with. So we really set very high ambition levels, and then we can start execution. So just the 5 of us, when we went live with our first customer implementing credit card and Apple Pay in the Nordics in October 2017, we were only 15 people. And we've grown a lot since then. And we've also grown in the portfolio. And I think one of the biggest things that really emphasize the core values of us as people and as founders and as person at Enfuse is my carbon action. So we started off enabling payments, and then we looked into banking services, looking at the data that we are allowed to store and process. So we are really a regulated entity. We were looking at what do we actually have? Well, we hold the information relevant to actually help in the everyday impact when it comes to fighting climate change. And that's where my carbon action was born. And today we are 57 employees. We have over 20 customers globally. And we run over 10 million end customers payments on a daily basis. And this is only the beginning. So what we want to achieve in the next coming 5 years is to be a company that has a minimum of 300 million euros of revenue. And by having that, we will be residing in 3 continents. We were the first one to put card payment processing in public cloud. And I think that was one of the things that really showed us that if we really set our mind to it and we just get things done, we can achieve things that nobody had done before. And it's funny, I just realized that we have Google representatives here, but I want to be bigger and better than Google. And I say, why not? So if we just take that down and put it into actionable items and start execution, I mean, how hard can it be? If they have done it, we can do it. I mean, we have the good fortune of living in this country where everything is safe and sound. So it's a good way to really take on the internationalization. Taking care of our people is of course important, but our customers are also the most valuable items that we hold. So what we do is we package compliance measures, and we really want to make sure that the people working at Enfuse really believe in the things that we believe when we founded the company. So we do a lot of work to make sure that we can grow internally. And when we look at the diversity, it's important for us. We have over 10 nationalities, including Åland people. And then we have 34% female. And I remember the first 2 years, really hard to get females involved. And here I say, if you want to work for a company, don't look at the open positions. Just look at the company, the values, and apply. I mean, it's not harder than that. Don't start looking at, do I fit in? Yes, you fit in if you have the ambition and the mindset to get things done. So I'm starting to run out of time, which is not very unusual. So in order to really jump to our latest services, we really believe that sustainability is the next thing in payments and in the financial industry as well. And it needs diverse. So I really encourage every woman to join in and seek tech positions, because that's where change can be made. Implementing change is really important for the future. And well, I end off with saying that have the courage to grab opportunities. So when you have big dreams and goals, you will make big and bold decisions, and that's when big things can happen. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Monica, for an inspiration keynote. You mentioned about grabbing on opportunities, and I'd like to ask you a question, because you were working for a long time with corporations and then went into becoming a tech founder. And I'm sure there's people online and here also with us at the event who are perhaps considering whether they should become an entrepreneur themselves. So do you have any sort of advice that you would give to these people who are sort of considering this at this very moment?
Yeah, well, to put it in my words, I would just fucking do it. Because in the end of the day, you will only regret the chances you didn't take. So please, just grab opportunity. And you heard a lot of good speakers here. Just reach out. We are here to help in any way we can.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
And about, grabbing opportunities, this is the place where we find people that we can connect with and who can also perhaps in the future provide us these opportunities as well. But let's move on. The gender bias is far more deeply rooted than we may realize. How can we fight bias to become more objective and treat people fairly? Next, joining us for a panel discussion on understanding gender biases for people in technology, we have Maria Dunderfelt, Chief Security Officer at Huawei, Kenigbolo Meija Steffen, Front-End Engineer Lead at Bcaster, and online joining us, Susanna Baira, Research Manager at Tech Academic Engineers and Architects in Finland, and moderating the discussion, Reetta Heiskanen from Helsingin Sanomat. Please, panelists, join me here on stage. The stage is yours, and make the most out of it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, women, men, everyone in tech. It's super wonderful to be here, and I'm super excited for this final chapter of this great event. Let's wrap up the evening with a panel discussion regarding the gender bias in technology, and let's really deep dive into the topic and try to find out what are the deep root causes for gender bias in technology. So we have amazing panelists today. We have Susanna Bairo from TEK, Academic Researchers Finland, joining us online. It's great to have you on board, Susanna. Can you hear us well? Perfect.
Yes, I can hear you really well.
And then we have Maria Dunderfeld from Huawei Technologies. She has an extensive career of 20 years in cybersecurity. It's really amazing to have you here as well. And then we have Kennik Bolo, Meija Steffen from Bcaster. You're a front-end engineer at the company, and it's an AI-based media platform, right?
Yes.
And I'm Reetta Heiskanen. I'm a journalist at Helsingin Sanomat, following business, tech, and politics at the moment. And yeah, let's actually jump on with the first question that we have in the online poll today. So remember that you have the online poll that you can all participate in and keep voting. So the first question is, in your opinion, does gender bias exist in technology? And please answer yes or no, so we will follow up with the answers. So yeah, let's start the evening with Susanna. You've actually worked in technology for 20 years, researching these different topics. And let's start with a very simple question. Do you think, is there a gender bias in technology?
Yes, and in my view, the question is rather what kind of bias, to what extent, where, and how does it manifest? Because statistics and research show us, for example, that it's not that difficult for a woman to start a career in technology, but advancing on that career, staying on that career often seems a lot harder.
What do you think, Maria? Is there a gender bias in technology field, and how does it show?
Well, actually, I could say, as I actually underline everything that and all the questions that what is it and what it actually means, like Susanna said. But yes, there is actually. There are unfortunately some gender bias in the technology field. And as an example, there are, if we are looking from the females and males, there are biases in roles and responsibilities, for example. There are differences in positions, there are differences in salaries, etc., in benefits. So those are as an example given. Yeah.
Kennik Bolo, what are your thoughts?
So personally, I think it actually exists. I think it's been, it's a fundamental part of the industry that needs to change. And I can cite an example. I was speaking in Croatia about a year ago, and having a conversation with one of the engineers there, who I could tell from the conversation that she was super smart. She did go for an interview, and she could actually hear some men on the team saying they don't want to have a woman on their team. Not because she's not qualified, but because she's a woman, and they don't want to have a girl on the team. So yes, these biases exist, and we don't talk about them enough. Yeah.
That's a horrifying example, and I think by now we've heard all the numbers during the night that are very, very depressing. So as Yasin Sam said, only 5% of the leadership positions in technology are actually held by women, and only 1% of female founders actually get VC funding. 93% goes to all male tech teams. Susanna, what do you think? Why is this?
Well, just reflecting on what Maria was saying also, that and Kennik Bolo, that research shows that gender matters in really many ways. So who is recruited, who is selected for demanding project, who is seen to be capable for leadership, and what kind of salary the person then gets. To me, the crux of the problem is how competence in technology is gendered, meaning that a woman often has to prove she's competent, whereas for a man, the assumption is that, of course, he's competent. And international research, for example, from the US, UK, Sweden, even from Finland, has shown that this intertwining of masculinity and technological competence really impacts women's careers in technology. And it's really interesting that the more a field is considered like deeply technical, the stronger seems this linkage with masculinity be. And IT and ICT are actually really good examples.
So basically, women are thought of not being capable enough for actually taking on a leadership role, for example. Maria, have you noticed the same in cybersecurity? For example, you work at Huawei in a very high leadership position.
Yes, I'm actually very new in Huawei, but I have a 20 year of experience of leadership positions in multinational companies, leading security organizations. And I must say that in my 20-year career, I have never ever met any issues, and that's for truth. So when it comes to that, naturally, when I'm a woman, I have to show my capabilities in a better manner, so that I have to show that I'm capable of leading the teams, leading the security area. So I have to do more than a male, for example, in a position. But when it comes to the security and where I have been working for 20 years, I have been working in a very, it's a very male-oriented area, and it is definitely.
Absolutely.
Yes, and when you are working there as a woman, for example, in my early stages of my career, I had to meet military representatives, governmental representatives, and when I started to have the discussions or being part of this kind of national security crisis trainings, etc., I thought myself that, okay, how do I get and how do I fit into this? But I never had to do anything specific. I was there, and I was actually treated as a colleague. So in that way, I must say that I'm surprised how my career has evolved and how I have been seen in my career path.
So you said you have to do more. Are there any compromises that you have had to do during your career in technology?
Not really.
That's great.
I must say that not really.
What about Kenikbalo? You described a situation in Croatia where that was a really concrete example. Have you noticed anything else? You also do a non-profit, Code Afrique, where you actually do tech education for underrepresented groups. Are there any examples, for example, from that group that you've noticed?
Well, so I can say for sure that we have all through the existence of Code Afrique, which is almost 3 years now, we've never been able to have a female come through. And now I would like to go a bit deeper into this, because it's not just about saying we want more women, it's about the orientation that we give to women at a very young age. Now, if you take movies, for example, when young girls watch TV shows and all of that, what you find is every time you have a sex scene, it's always men, right? And young girls would actually grow up seeing this as a field that's supposed to be for work. Like she pointed out, it's seen like the more technical it gets, the more masculine it gets. However, this is not the case, because as a front-end engineering lead, some of my best role models are all women. On Twitter, for example, sometimes I say, I'm stuck at a problem, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, how would Melanie Sumner do this? Melanie works with accessibility. She works at LinkedIn, and she's the Microsoft representative to WCAG. Now, if we do not try to figure the issues out from the root cause, we would go on and say, oh, we need more women to come through. How many women are actually getting into tech schools? And why are they not getting into tech schools? These are like some fundamental parts of it that we need to figure out. So these things actually exist, and they're always concrete examples. I'm a typical example because I've never been able to get a woman through. I've had a lot of women apply, but never been able to see one woman go through the entire 4 months of our bootcamp. And not because they're not capable, but rather because they see this field as something that is more male-dominated. They wouldn't get as much interviews as their male counterparts will get. A concrete example is 2 people with the same qualifications, the same skills, applying, and the male is actually invited for the interview, the female is not invited. It happens here in Finland, actually.
Before jumping back to you, Susanna, let's go through the actual stats that we got from the poll. So in your opinion, does gender bias exist in technology? 96% said yes, and 3% said no. So we definitely have a problem here. Susanna, what are some concrete examples that you've noticed in work life and in your research?
So as said, so there are these issues on recruitment, and then on how to advance in one's career. But as Kenikbalo was saying, it already starts earlier, of course. So it starts already from who selects maths in high school and all that. But as said, so I think although it starts really early, so there are studies that start already like from how small boys and girls interact with toys and all these kind of things. But it's also really about how we grow into being men and women in our different societies and what kind of possibilities are seen to be there for a woman and for a man, and how they then shape what we see to be possible.
So it has also a lot to do with representation, what we see in the world, what we think is possible by the examples that we see. Maria, how did you actually end up in the field? Did you see someone that inspired you to actually take on a career in technology?
No, actually not, because I don't have any technology university degree. I have only for the security part university degrees, but I'm not technician. I don't know anything about coding, and I have never ever needed that in my career path. And when I was at school thinking about before my 20-year career, or even when I started to think of what I become as an adult, I never thought that I would be in a technology company or even in this kind of high positions, leading teams or this kind of important area, leading the important area. I never dreamt about it. So there was one person when I entered. I have been working in operator for all my career, and there was one person, and that was my manager. And my manager, actually, he was a male, and he saw possibilities in me. And then he started to advertise trainings in security area. So he has actually been one of the persons who actually put me in this kind of path. And I started in very low positions, as I mentioned. There are roles and responsibilities, deviations in females and males. But I started gradually get high positions and higher positions, more responsibilities. And one of the things I want to highlight here that I never ever applied for those positions. So I was always told that, okay, Maria, there is a possibility for you. Would you like to take that? And naturally, as someone here said, that think about, was it Mario that said at the beginning that think about a little bit before you say no. I never said no. I said, yes, I'm ready for that. So that's how I do it. And that's how my career has actually involved and why I'm here. I'm very interested about technology. I have been privileged to work with the very skilled employees, all technicians. When we are talking about cybersecurity, etc., it's all about technology, but it's not all about technology. It's also knowing the business, etc., etc. But I have been privileged to work with the technicians, and they have taught me what I know now, today.
What would be your 2 cents for a woman in technology actually struggling to proceed in their career, getting promoted in a big company such as Google or Huawei or others?
Achieve your dreams, because you never know what will happen if you try what you actually do. And I think that what I have done my work as good as I can. And as I told for one of the a newspaper interviewer that I have done my work so that I can actually look back, so that there is nothing to someone to say that, okay, something has been, done wrong or it has gone to the wrong direction. So I think that that's one of the things. Do your things and do them good.
Have you noticed anything such as, should women be more pushy? Should they be more aggressive inside the organization?
Well, I am a strong personality. I don't know if that's something to do with it, where I'm today, but I'm very strong. And there was, among my staff, there was saying, even though my clothes are black, but I was called, I didn't take this as a wrong way, but I was a black bitch. So it goes like, I had even a coffee mug saying that who I am. So yes, you have to be strong, but you also have to be, you have to stand behind your words, and you have to take your positions. you don't have to be cruel, but you need to know what you are doing.
What about Kenik-Bolo? What really drove you to be a front-end engineer?
Well, so my career didn't start off in front-end engineering. I was actually in med school, but I loved playing video games, and eventually I just wanted to fix things. I needed to browse on my phone, and I couldn't buy the credits I needed because my mother was angry with me. So I decided to hack the network and try to browse for free. And that was how I actually started coding. I've started from networking. I used to work with ISPs and set up servers, and then I got into back-end engineering, and then I got to front-end engineering. So it's not been the traditional path. My background is in tech, actually. My bachelor's and my master's are both in IT and software engineering management. So my background is purely tech, but it wasn't the traditional path. I got into this industry out of curiosity about video games, actually. Yeah.
And Susanna, you've studied both at the University of Helsinki, Faculty of Social Sciences, and currently finishing your doctoral studies at Hanken. Was it an easy jump to join the technology field as a research manager, or have you had any difficulties?
Okay, this is a surprising question because unlike others, perhaps I'm not that comfortable about talking about myself. But yeah, so actually how it happened was that while I was studying at the university for my master's degree, I started to work in an association that is now called Tieke, which is the development center for, at the time it was information technology, now it's for information society. And what I realized by the time I got my master's that, yes, I have been studying social policy, sociology, social psychology, some development is what I know about is actually how to work with IT and IT companies and IT organizations. And then I sort of continued on that path. And so first I was working as an analyst and then as a research manager in a marketing and consulting company focusing on ICT field. And then from there, then joined tech about 9 years ago. So on that, so I have sort of been working around tech all of my career. But yeah, I was actually like when the question, I mean, there was the campaign at, are you like, am I a woman in tech? I had to like really think, am I a woman in tech? Not still sure.
Good question. Before jumping into the next question, let's check the online poll again. Please vote, people that are online. The next question is, have you experienced gender discrimination in the workplace? This is a really interesting one, so let's see what people vote. And yeah, so as has been mentioned today, 19% of the new students actually entering the technology field are only women. That is not a very good percentage. As you, Susanna, mentioned, there are problems in the education landscape in that sense that not enough women are actually interested in entering as technology students. What could be done to improve that? Kenik-Bolo.
Well, I think it again goes back to the fundamentals. So for something like this, I would like to use Finland as a classical example. If you go back to the 2000s, when Taija was president, what you can see over the years, up till this point today, is that you have more women in parliament. It has grown over the years. And how has that happened? Take those who were born between 1980 and 1990. Someone who was born in 1990 was 10 when Taija was president. So you have grown up to see that women can actually be presidents, women can be politicians, women can be policymakers. Growing up and seeing that you have reference points. So it's very difficult for someone to tell you, no, you can't be president. But my daughter would go and say, oh, of course I can be president. I can be prime minister. Sana is prime minister. Right. So it's about making sure that we create an environment and situation where women can actually aspire to be. So it's like, again, the example I made with the movie, right? You watch a TV show, and whenever you see someone hacking, by the way, those things are quite crap anyways, but whenever you see those kind of environments, it's always male-dominated. right? Someone asked me, my cousin asked me if I would like my daughter to be a software engineer, and I said no. Not with the way the industry is shaped right now. There's so much gaslighting, and there's so much a woman has to go through to actually get herself through the door. So I think it's about fundamentals. Again, I'm coming back to the fundamentals because I think how a child is shaped and the kind of confidence a child has growing up, it's a very important part of them actually seeing that they belong in industry. Because if they can see role models, if they can actually be confident enough and know that this is not, regardless of what they say, I've seen people who are like me do it, I can do it, then it makes it easier. So again, for me, it's back to the fundamentals. We need to make the field, we need to remove the myth that tech and IT in general is as a masculine field, because some of the best engineers I know are actually women.
Maria, what do you think could be done in the education space to improve this?
Well, as I said, I have not ever been myself in technology. I have not studied as for example, you have or Susanna have. But I think that when it comes to, as you said, we have to change the ideology when it comes to the technology. Talking about men and women, we should forget that. We are humans, we are people, we are equal skilled, we have the same capabilities. And when it comes to that, we women, sometimes we want to have something which is more interesting. We want to see the value, for example, what you do. It was presented in the first panelist, Anna-Mari was it? Yeah, so you have to see the end goal, for example. So from that angle, if we change somehow the educational level, perhaps there is more interest from the women to participate and take part of those. Yeah.
Susanna's question was brilliant in that sense, that how to actually make it more inclusive, that the tech field could be even larger, that it could spread out. It wouldn't be only engineers, but humanists, philosophists, journalists would actually feel like women in tech, and all kinds of researchers. Do you have any concrete ideas how to make this happen? Bring on the philosophers and humanists and the next generation of tech.
Was that to me?
You can start.
Okay, thanks. I have been thinking about this a lot, and I think one thing is really to create this understanding or advance the understanding that it's actually quite hard to do anything that has not to do with technology. It's like everything is tech. I was interviewing young girls for a project in about 2010, and there were several of them who said that, well, I want a career in, for instance, designing clothes, so I don't need anything that has to do with technology, or that I want to be a musician because I want to be creative, so I don't need to do anything with technology. And I'm like looking at them and, do you actually know how they do those things nowadays? I mean, you really need technology in most things you do. So it's really important that we have people who are passionate about whatever topic that they're passionate about involved in creating the technology that then enables them to do things better.
Well said. Let's check the online poll answers actually at this point. So have you experienced gender discrimination in the workplace? 61% of you said yes. 38, almost 39% said no. What kind of feelings rise from these answers, Maria?
I'm surprised looking from my career perspective. So this has been also, naturally I have studied the articles and all the studies and everything, and I know the figures and everything, but this is actually, this is crucial. This is something that I need to look into in more depth, yes.
So many companies are actually using unconscious bias trainings to get to the root problem of if they have some kind of biases when recruiting, when giving funding, when finding new startups, doing the deal flow. Do you have any experience in how do these unconscious bias trainings work? And should they be implemented even wider in the society? Kenny Bolo, what are your thoughts on the unconscious bias trainings?
Well, I think it's vital. It's vital. It's important to have this kind of trainings. What I can't say is to how well the results of these trainings are. But personally, for example, I think that having this kind of trainings at least brings the topic out, right? It makes us talk about it because, in principle, a lot of the times the discussion is not about is there gender bias or is there no gender bias? Do I have unconscious bias? Do I not have any bias at all? Some people, when we say unconscious, we're talking about people not knowing, right? So if there's one thing I'm glad about it is that it's actually bringing this discussion to the forefront. As to the results of it, I can't really say much on that because I'm still I can't say that it will give or it will bring about some very positive change. And I'm saying this knowing that I work in a field that is male dominated and one that is currently very difficult to change. So I can't say for sure how much of a change this will bring. What I can say for sure is that it's important because it's actually bringing out the conversation and informing people that there is a bias that actually exists, regardless if you know about it or not.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Maria?
Well, I could say yes, the companies are implementing this kind of training sessions, but what is then changed after that? Are the policies, how those are implemented, instructions and trainings and how those are followed, etc. So I think that the important part is here, that yes, you can state on stage and you can say that our company, we have this and this and this trainings, but what actually is changed and what's the influence on those trainings to the company?
Susanna, what are your thoughts on the unconscious bias trainings?
Yeah, I think you're really hitting on important points there, that yes, they can be helpful, but they need to be part of like an overall strategy towards inclusion. And that means that the company needs to define and communicate why the work culture needs improvement, and that it is not about trying to classify you as a good or bad person, but like as Ken Blow was also saying, to recognizing that we all have biases anyway. So it's really good to be aware of them. And that also when part of this strategy towards inclusion would need these targets, and then how are they going to be implemented? So I think we had really good examples from Google and Accenture today about how this can be done.
So there's this wonderful book by Caroline Criado Perez called Invisible Women, where she actually describes a world where 47% of, for example, women get injured in a car accident more likely than men, and a doctor might prescribe drugs that haven't actually been invented for the female body. This is an interesting question, but do you actually feel like the technology world has been designed for you? Susanna, you can start.
Short answer, probably not. But yeah, I love the book also. And it has such a. My problem is that reading it, I always get stuck in the sources and start to actually track down the original articles and so on. So I only can read like half an hour at the time of the actual text. But anyway, so there are a lot of things that one has seen now over the years that really could have been designed better, and that make you think, like, I think Yasin-san was making this really good point, that it's not like the technology sort of as such is racist or I would say gender biased, but then if it has not been tested and designed for like more diverse group of users, and if the biases of the developers are not taken into account, then the end result might be that it is racist or gender biased or other things, unfortunately.
Maria, what are you really excited for the next decade of technology? Let's try to wrap up in a more kind of into the future looking question.
The next decade. Naturally, from the discussions that we have had today, I would like to see women part of those, but I would like also to see that the technology is transferred so that it actually enables more and benefits more lives and eases, the usage eases people's daily life shortly. Yes.
Kenikbolo, what are you looking forward to?
I would say I'm looking forward to a more diversified technology industry. I think a fundamental part of it will be making people understand that being in tech is not just about writing code. I think that's a major flaw. Some of the best technical writers you have today are journalists who actually moved from journalism into technical writing. And technical writing is a fundamental part of the industry, because if you see the kind of documentation some engineers write, you would understand why I'm saying that.
Underline.
So I think I look forward to an industry where we diversify and it's more inclusive in the future.
And Susanna, what are you excited about?
Yeah, I would like to see the change that Kenikbolo was just describing, and also what Mario was saying about the usability of technology, because I think that's one thing that would increase the interest of women towards technology, is really that what you can do with it, not only like what it is. And then I think that one of the starting points that we have is really that to recognize that although we usually say here that like, okay, well, equality has been achieved or technology is gender neutral, but no, it's not. So we really need to like start from looking at these biases that we have and understanding the situation. And although Maria has had a really good career, so there are a lot of others who haven't or who have faced problems. So it's also to recognize that there are a lot of problems, but we can fix them if we really try to work together on that.
Perfect. Let's recognize the problems and fix them. Thank you so much for our wonderful panelists. A total all-star tech panel with wonderful people. And thank you, and let's build the next generation of technology.
Thank you, Retta.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, Kenikbolo, Susanna, and Reetta for a very interesting panel discussion. We're coming close to the end of the event, but before we go into sort of the recap and key learnings of the event, I'd like everybody still to participate in the final poll of today. So please go in and ask the question or answer the question of what is your overall rating for the event, and we'll look into it very, very soon. But before we end this year's Women in Tech Forum, I'd like to go through some of the key learnings and insights that has been shared on the stage here today. As you all know, we need to close the gender gap in technology. We went through the numbers already, and it's pretty much concerning about the state of women in tech at this very moment. We know that only 3% of females says that a career in technology is their first choice. Only 17% of ICT specialists are women, and 93% of all the funding invested in tech companies are going to all male teams. Hence, this topic and the insights we've been giving here today have been very crucial. We all know diversity, inclusion, equality are key factors in order to succeed in this. We know diversity, it's not only about gender, it goes into different forms of ethnicities, sexual orientations, and whatnot. And inclusion is the key of making sure that everybody feels that they're part of a team, creating success together. It makes business sense to have a diverse organization. When we ask the question of you, how many of your organization are female? 85% answered less than 50%. But when we asked how many women are part of the C-level positions within your company, the number was much higher. But there the question comes into, percentage-wise, how much of the leadership in your team are represented by men and women in total? When looking into retaining women in technology, remember that we all need to be public about our diversity numbers within our organization. Look into your numbers, commit to them, and make a change happen. When looking into your recruitment processes, and ask if your pool is diverse enough. Like Ekaterina from Inventure mentioned, reach out to the people you want to have part of your team and ask them to apply for these tech roles. Technology is also more than just working on the tech roles. The best skills is the availability to learn new skills, whether they are soft or hard skills. Create these opportunities. For investors, think about, is your deal flow diverse enough? Who are the people writing the checks and making these investment decisions? Do you have a diverse board enough of people writing these checks? We need more women to start companies. We need more women to be promoted to leadership roles. And for founders owning tech companies, make sure to ask yourself, are you providing these equal opportunities for everybody in the organization? Career projections, why is it so that the higher we go up in an organization, the less women we see holding these C-level positions? And the toxic bro culture in the tech scene, is it still existing, or are we actually shifting towards a more diverse, inclusive, and equal scene? It's critical to also know that some people have experienced it, whereas some people doesn't. We also asked you about the gender biases. Over 90% of the audience thinks gender biases exist in technology. And when asking if you've been facing gender discrimination in the workplace, over 70% were answering yes. We need more role models and mentors and people to look up to. We also need more diverse role models and people that we can look up to. We need to avoid all male panels for tech events. And for any organization creating events, make sure you have a list of diverse people who can be the speakers, mentors for these events and programs for the futures. For tech positions, women are perceived as not being competent, whereas men are assumed to be competent by default. If you're thinking like this, you're biased. So to wrap it up in a nutshell, we need more role models and mentors. A diverse workplace is a strong workplace. Diverse teams perform better. Diversity is good for business. With diversity, we are also creating better products and services. And diversity makes the world a better place. Hence, it's our job to encourage fellow women to join the tech scene. I still like to quote what Marja Miettinen, one of the founders of Women in Tech, said earlier today in the program. Let's talk about women in tech and include all genders in the conversation as well. We need to make the change together to ensure that the tech scene is more diverse, equal, and inclusive in the future. And it's not only about talking, but acting. And we know what to do once this event is over. Thank you. So, to look into the results of the poll we just answered you, or asked you about what is your overall rating for the event. It's great to see that most of the people think that the event has been fantastic so far, totally amazing. And I'm sure that everybody, also people here at the event venue and online, has been experiencing a best Women in Tech forum by far. Before closing the event, I'd still like to thank a lot of people who've been here today. I want to thank everybody who's been here with us at the event venue, people joining us online, all the partners, producers, organizers and speakers of the event. If you joined us later today or had to leave earlier, don't worry, the streaming will be available on the Women in Tech Finland's YouTube channel, so you can watch it later and share it with your friends and people in your companies to learn more about what we've been discussing about here today, because it's not only about what's been speaking about here, it's about sharing the knowledges forward. And if you haven't still check the LinkedIn Women in Tech Forum group or page, please go in there still. You have some time to get connected with people who joined the event here today. I want to thank you all. My name is Jessica Bleckenberg. I've been your host here today. This was Women in Tech Forum 2020, and I hope to see all of you here with us next year. Thank you.